A young couple came to our church. I remember this so well. I remember the pastor who was talking to them, and he came to one of our pastors to get counseling about marriage problems, and he began talking to them, and it was clear they should never have gotten married. And this was not a match made in heaven. So why did you get married? Oh, said the husband, it was the sermon our pastor preached in our church. Really, what sermon was it? Well, he preached on the walls of Jericho. Walls of Jericho? What does that have to do with marriage? Well, he said that God's people claimed the city, marched around it 7 times, and the walls fell down. He said if a young man believed God had given him a certain young girl, he could claim her, march around her 7 times, the walls of her heart would fall down. So that's what I did, and we got married. To which our pastor said, that can't be true. You're kidding me, right? No, that's true. And there were many other couples who got married because of the same sermon. Can you imagine people circling girls? I mean, that's enough to scare you, ladies. Talk about stalking. About the 3rd time around, you got to get out of there. Some people think marriages are made in heaven, and some are. But that's a marriage made in an allegory. A well-known pastor preached a series on the book of Nehemiah, and he said, Nehemiah's writing about Jerusalem's walls were in ruin. That speaks of a broken down walls of human personality. Nehemiah represents the Holy Spirit who comes to rebuild the walls of human personality that are broken down. When he got to the king's pool in chapter 2, he said this meant the baptism of the Holy Spirit, and the mortar between the bricks rebuilding the wall was speaking in tongues. So the message was, Nehemiah is teaching us that the Holy Spirit wants to rebuild the broken walls of your personality through the baptism of the Spirit and speaking in tongues. Nehemiah? It has nothing to do with human personality, the baptism of the Spirit, or speaking in tongues. But you know, people sit and say, that's deep. That is deep. Wow, I never saw that. Of course you never saw that. I remember Patricia and I were in Lake Geneva with a very well-known pastor who used to be a pastor of the largest church in the valley. And he preached on the rapture of the church one night from John 11. John 11 is about Lazarus and his resurrection. And he preached on the rapture of the church from John 11. And essentially he said Lazarus allegorically refers to the church. And Jesus saying, Lazarus, come forth, was a picture of the resurrection of the church. You know, and I'm looking for a way out as I'm sitting there listening to this. So afterwards, there was this little ice cream shop, and he said, John, were you there tonight? I said, yeah, I was there. He said, have you ever seen that in John 11? I said, no one has ever seen that in John 11. You are the first. And he took it as a compliment. He said to somebody, John says, no one's ever seen that but me. And oh boy. You know, I used to say this is like, you don't even need the Bible for this. You know, if you're going to make something up, you could use Little Bo Peep, right? You could say, Little Bo Peep. She was little. She was alienated by her name. She was sad. And to make her sadder, she lost her sheep. Everywhere in the world, people are lost. I mean, you can preach that stuff from anything. But they'll come home. Yes, if you're faithful, yes, those lost people, they'll come home. And I never knew what to do with wagging their tails behind them, actually. But I think you get the point. This is the Bible being used and abused.